From sunny Southern California, we bring you Meet Bridget.
Bring it on, baby.
Welcome back to Meet Bridget, Season 6. We are on a mission to combat the teenage confidence crisis. It's hard being a teen, and we talk about it honestly. If this is something you're passionate about, stay with us.
Meet Bridget is a giant career and life path library and a place where women of all ages and stages can connect on common ground. Each episode starts with a deep dive into our guest's day-to-day lifestyle, and then we tap into her unfiltered teenage stories, making the roots of her success relatable. I'm Kashia Rosenberg, and I co-host this show alongside my best friend, Asha Gabriel.
Today, you'll meet Christina King, a therapist focused on teen mental health, mother-daughter connection, and helping young women find their way back to themselves. Her work is deeply rooted in her own teenage experience with pressure, mental health struggles, and the power of being seen. After more than a decade of education and clinical training, Christina opened her private practice in Manhattan Beach in 2024. At Meet Bridget, we talk a lot about confidence and communication as a cycle. When girls feel safe to communicate, confidence grows. When confidence grows, communication becomes easier. Today's conversation sits right in that space.
Welcome back. We are sitting here with teen therapist Christina King. We're so excited. Today, we want to get into some mini episodes to really talk about really pertinent issues in the teen world because we have the benefit of sitting here with an expert. So today we really want to get into when to seek help, spotting early warning signs, what that feels like. As parents and friends of people, or even within ourselves, sometimes when something's off, I feel like you sense it before you can really put a name to it or you can organize it. Mm-hmm. Can you run us through, kind of how you look at things like anxiety, depression, and not necessarily as named items, but like how you break into that with teens and what to look for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to your point, like you really do start to feel it before you start to like put a name to it. And of course, I feel like for me, I can like spot it very quickly at this point, but especially with teens, like we know, I'm sure you all remember, it's like it's very up and down in those years. Yeah. And so one of the things that we're really looking for is this like persistent irritable mood, this persistent like numbness or like kind of flatness that kids might describe, or it can be kind of like more with anxiety where you're seeing just that like worried about everything or like extremely worried about some continuous thing, right? So we're almost starting to get out of the like up and down and more into this like chronic mood or this chronic state that's lasting for like 2 weeks or so.
Interesting. And so is that like timeline really where you create the delineation between what one would say is like a normal teen mood versus, because like at every stage of development, like I have a toddler, Asha has toddlers. And there's like this line I find where they're like, I'll be like, oh, my toddler's throwing a tantrum. And they're like, that's normal behavior.
Good boundary
like,
testing even, like it's
but when is it not? Because there's certainly a line.
Mm-hmm. And that's where, I mean, especially with like parents and being at home, it's kind of that bit where it's like, you feel like you have like the same kid living 2 different lives because you like have parent teacher conferences and they're like, oh my gosh, they're so amazing, they're so respectful, like, and they give these glowing reports and you're kind of sitting there like, my kid, like they are so snooty at home, they are so this at home, they barely talk to us at home, right? But like that's a good sign when it's like everyone in their world is giving these like really great reports about them and they're so engaging and so this and so that, and then you come home and you're like, my kid, what, right? And on that inverse, though, it's like that's another potential, I'll say, like warning sign is when you start to hear from like especially adults and teachers that see them every day. They're like, something's going on, like something's not right, or they stopped engaging. Like we're really looking at kind of that shift in behavior that's like either abrupt and really fast or kind of that like slow, regression into lethargy or lack of motivation, lack of interest, pleasure, things like that.
Do you feel like in terms of first signs, let's say for like anxiety or depression, just kind of across the board, is that usually showing up at home or at school if someone's noticing something? Is there a pattern there for you?
I think there's less of a pattern, and I think it's more of like, your kid and when something starts to feel off. And that's where it's like, it can be the fact that like they're holding it all together at school, but then it's like home is just this like tornado. It's this nightmare.
Sure.
It's like really, really
Mhm.
awful. But then it's like they walk outside and the mask is on, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so that's where I do feel like those closest start to see it first. And this is where,
Mhm.
especially with teenagers, they're such like social with their friends that I feel like their friends start to get a good inclination of when it's going on versus parents. Because with parents, it can be like, is this a phase or is this the
Yeah.
normal thing that they're pushing
Right, or
boundaries
like
or what?
puberty and stuff. I mean, like we've
Totally.
talked about this a lot. Like I've had PMDD from my teen years,
Yeah.
and like
Mm-hmm.
at what point is a parent or a loved one being like, okay, this is just a very new hormonal thing that's going on and I'm seeing once a month? Or is
Yeah.
this just like a shift where it's like, no, this
Mhm.
isn't just like a, everything sucks and I'm bad at
Yeah.
everything for like 2
Yeah.
days and then it kind of goes away. You know?
Exactly. And that's like where I talk about like that timeline being important because I'm
Yeah.
like, anxiety and depression, it's like those are also just like emotional states, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Which
you
are
wake up one day and you're just like
human.
anxious. Yeah, right. And there's no rhyme or reason for
Yeah.
it. You wake up one day and you're just like depressed and it's an off day and like that's a bummer, but you can get through it, right? But when you're seeing that like day in, day out over time, that's when
Mhm.
we start to get really concerned. But also, of course, I'm like, if you're depressed for a day, like we still want to help you through it. We still want to like learn skills,
Yeah.
right? So
The coping mechanisms.
Just so we
mhm,
have like a landscape, what
mhm,
we're talking about in terms of like warning signs and what to look for
mhm,
and when to ask for help or get help for somebody.
mhm,
We mentioned briefly anxiety, depression. Then there's
mhm,
also, of course, substance issues, signs of
mhm,
substance issues, traumatic experience, maybe something going on,
mhm.
abusive relationships, eating
Yeah.
disorders.
Yeah.
In your practice, is there any one of these categories that you're seeing an increase in or more than
Mhm.
any other?
I would say for my practice, I mean, there's a lot of like anxiety, depression, a lot of perfectionism. I'm in a very like high achieving area.
Yeah.
And then I think from there, I see a lot of not to the point of like diagnosable eating disorders, but
Mhm.
kind of this like playing with some of these concepts. And I
Yeah.
think as teen girls, especially like again in the area that I'm in, which is Manhattan Beach, like it's a beach town, right? So it's a lot of like body focus, achievement focus,
Sure.
but it's
Mhm.
also this way I think for teens to feel adult because you're dieting or you're doing
Mhm.
this or you're doing that and you're doing some of these things that I think they hear adults talk about. And
Yeah.
so that definitely is a branch that I see a lot of. I think it's a lot of the kids who like aren't subscribing to what I would say is like the dominant culture. That's where I start to see the risk for like substance use and abuse.
Okay.
It
Feeling kind of like that, well, this isn't working for me, so I'm
yeah.
going to hide
Mhm.
out
Mm-hmm.
here.
And like find a way to make the world quiet,
Mm.
essentially. And I would say especially with like the drinking culture and stuff, like that can infiltrate, I would say, like all levels. And so just having conversations with your kids earlier. And this is something I know we're gonna talk about, like, who to seek support from, but I'm
Yeah.
like, it doesn't always need to be a therapist.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it can be the auntie that they're really close to. It can be a coach that they really like. Like having a trusted adult that they can talk to, I think is really pivotal, but also talk to about difficult subjects like this
Yeah.
that like, as parents, it might go in one ear and out the next. And I still encourage you to have that conversation so that they know your signs or like
Right.
what they're expecting of you, but also having it be reinforced by maybe someone that they're going to be like more receptive to hear it
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say? So like we're talking about one angle where it's like we're in the stage where we're the parents, right? So it's
Mhm.
like, okay, how do I approach this? How do I, or even as a friend, the outside person, if you will,
Mhm.
like how do I manage the situation that feels like there's something wrong, can't quite put my finger on
Mhm.
it. As the therapist here, how do you help the teen navigate those feelings? Like what are there identifiable like tools or like maybe like trigger feelings, or maybe there's a different word for it of like, I
Mhm.
see that you're feeling this way. And like
Mhm.
that might be a byproduct of X, Y, or Z, whether it's
Mhm.
performance anxiety or whether
Mhm.
it's because I suspect there might be some kind of traumatic thing going on,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
I try to just ask a lot of questions and help them understand their own perspective because a lot of times teens are like, I have no idea why I'm feeling this way,
Yeah.
Mm.
right? And then as you start, and I will also say too, it's like if I come in with assumptions, it can be used therapeutically where I'll say like, people are much more likely to tell you all the reasons you're wrong than like all the
Yeah.
reasons you're right. So like
Yeah.
expect some of that, but also leading with that curiosity of just like, like I can think of, a kid one time came in and it's like you could just see it on her face. Like she looked pale, like she did not look good. And immediately I was like, she's in a depressed state. Like,
Yeah.
but I did not start with that. I
Right.
was just like, what's going on? Like, you seem a little different from 2 weeks ago. Like, what's changed? And just like opening up the
Yeah.
conversation to kind of let them begin to get some insight into it, begin
Yeah.
to be able to like describe and figure out what it is that they're feeling as one, just like an intervention, but then two, also like when I brought up the word depression, it was like, no, I'm not
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And so we ended up like coining it a different term, which
Yeah.
was kind of an inadvertent way to talk about the feeling without like
Labeling it even.
Yeah. Because it's
That's
like
so interesting because I feel
Mhm.
like everyone's like mental health is in the zeitgeist now,
Yeah.
where it's like
Totally.
when we were
Yeah.
kids or our parents were kids, no one was like teen mental health. Like now
No.
teens they're taking everything in,
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like they're aware of mental health and they
Mhm.
probably have heard all these coins of eating
yeah.
disorders and,
Mhm.
depression, anxiety, substances and
Mhm.
stuff. But like when you're actually in it, it's like, well, no, that couldn't be me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so my
Mhm.
sister and I were in a car accident when we were teenagers. We were both in high school
Mhm.
and it was really scary. And there was like a moment where I thought I lost her and she ended up being okay.
Yeah.
But I think the trauma of that moment led to like later, my mom took me to a therapist and I remember being like, why are you taking me to therapy?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I was late to get my learning my permit. I like,
Mhm.
would not want to drive over 50 miles an hour in any
Mhm.
setting. And then I was like just showing a lot of signs of like restricted eating.
Yeah.
And now I can look back and be like, oh,
Mhm.
like I probably would label what I was doing as an eating disorder at this
Mhm.
point. But if someone would have looked at me and been like, you have an eating disorder, I'd be like,
Yeah.
get out of here.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And walked away. But I feel like the
Mhm.
therapist, she didn't even like label at any point. We
Yeah.
just like, I remember we had a few sessions and she was just asking me, she's like, so what's going on with your friends?
Mhm.
What's going on with this? What do you think about that? And then
Mhm.
eventually we just kind of like stopped. I remember the last session, I had kind of hit a good moment in my friend groups and everything. And
Mhm.
she must have been like, okay, I'm seeing something where we can kind of take a pause.
Yeah.
But it's like even reflecting on that experience with therapy, which was like
Mhm.
kind of before I didn't know any of
Mhm.
my friends that had gone to therapy.
Yes.
Not necessarily jumping to a diagnosis, which might be like
Mhm.
as a parent, if you're
Yeah.
seeing something, you might want to be like, honey, I think you have alcoholism,
Totally.
you're
Yeah.
desperate and you're like, your mind is
Yes.
going there, but to
Mhm.
resist maybe labeling it and starting with
Yeah.
questions, I think is a
Mhm.
really good tip.
And I think even to add on to that, it's like one as the parent, it's like there's a little bit of like relief of being like,
Mhm.
okay, this is what it is. There's a professional helping you. Like
Yes.
it's all like under control.
Yeah.
Right. But then also, I think as a teen, there's also this level of like, I think over identification with it,
Sure.
which then it becomes this like, I am depressed, therefore I am always depressed.
Right.
Therefore, this is like this
And this is the
scarlet
reason I can't do this,
Yes.
or I won't ever
Mhm.
feel this way,
Exactly.
because I have this
Yes.
label now.
And so it kind of goes like one of both ways. And this is where I'm like, we can talk about the symptoms without a diagnosis necessarily. And
Yeah.
like sometimes that's also like easier, especially like imagine yourself at 15 being like, I'm depressed.
Yeah.
Like that's heavy. Right.
Yeah.
But like, oh, I feel numb. We can deal with numbness. Like
Yeah.
we can help figure
Yeah,
that
let's get
back.
curious about it. Like,
Yeah.
why? What else is
Mhm.
going on? And like,
Exactly.
when did this start? What else started
Mhm.
at that time? And
Yeah.
those kind of just
Yeah.
having someone get curious about your situation rather
Yeah.
than like jumping to a label.
Totally.
It sounds like reframing is really significant too in your practice with teens. And what I'm
Mhm.
hearing is, and what I know like clinically is like teens are going through like this developmental phase where they're, creating identity amongst their peers and within
Yes.
themselves.
Mhm.
And so I can totally see how like if you label them something, like the propensity to hold on to that for a long time is really high.
Yeah.
How do you like other than just not like labeling just the feelings,
Mhm.
how else do you navigate that with the teens that are
Mhm.
struggling with the various different like high level emotions
Mhm.
without, for example, like the real world experience? Because like I remember being a teen girl and feeling like my emotions are really mature, my thought
Mhm.
processes are logical and intact. And you think like that's all true,
Mhm.
but it's through the lens of not having experienced the world yet. So
Mhm.
how do you navigate that?
Yeah. And I mean, this is literally where I'm like so much of the like I feel like my work with teens is like building perspective,
Mhm.
right? And like some of that, again, like call it we'll stick in this depression metaphor. It's like okay, you were feeling this way right now, but you also weren't feeling this way 2 weeks ago. So it's like creating some of this level of impermanence to like our exact situation and like getting comfortable with the uncertainty that like it can change and it can go all these different ways. And then also taking it out of like 2 weeks to today and then taking it into like, how do you want to look back on this situation in 5 years? Right. And like so often it can be hard to like think future. And I'm like, okay, 5 years ago, you were in 3rd grade. I imagine there was a test that you did really bad on. And then they're like, oh, yeah, it was like Miss Stein's 3rd grade, you know, like grammar test. And it was da-da-da-da-da, right?
Cried all
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. And they go back to that. And then I'm like, how do you feel about it now?
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, oh, it's, you know, nothing. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's also like helping them with that perspective of like 5 years is a long time. Like, how do you want to think back on this situation? How do you want to feel about this situation? How do you want to feel you handled it? Whether it's like appropriately escalating it or appropriately de-escalating it and trying to help them like think about it in a completely different context. Yeah.
I've always been curious about just our relative time frames, right? For a teenager, maybe a single text, right, feels from a friend that had a weird tone, you know, feels like huge, you know, and I think as a teenager, like a lot of things feel really big, you know, but there can be a disconnect, like say between a mom and a daughter, right? Where someone like brings something up and, you know, as a parent, sometimes the impulse is like, oh, that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
You're like, don't worry, that's not a big deal.
That's
and
not
just
how
kind
she
of
meant
writing it
it.
out because for them, for an adult, it
Mhm.
isn't a big deal. How many of those texts have we gotten? And we've learned at this point that
Yeah.
that is, that's our experience.
Mhm.
How do you, both in your practice, but also maybe coaching parents
Mhm.
or people with more age and experience, how do you kind of coach them to understand that in a teen lens, like writing off the lack of experience isn't really the way to go?
Totally. This is where like one of my, I feel like, biggest things right now with parents is like educating on teenage development and like what to expect during this stage. And like you're kind of naming something in there where it's like their brains are getting a major override, specifically their limbic system, which is the emotional system. So I think
The
we
lizard
like
brain.
yeah, right? And we talk about teens and like their hormones. And I'm like, mood fluctuations has very little to do with hormones, actually. It is mostly brain changes. But the limbic system is where our amygdala is held, which is where we're like scanning for safety and danger in the environment. So this is where they have this overactive system. So that shift in tone or like they didn't respond to my text becomes this like signal and alert system in their brain that is like going off,
Like,
right?
I'm not safe,
Yes.
you know, literally.
And this is also where like I feel like the biggest thing I hear is like kids are like, they're always yelling at me. My mom's always yelling at me. And the mom looks at me and she's like, I'm like never yelling. And it's this like huge disconnect, right?
Like, what?
Yes. And it's so, I mean, I say silly, but it's like, I can appreciate it. I'm like, when you're in that house, it probably feels so contentious and conflictual all the time. And you're like, I can't even say anything to my teen anymore without them like getting defensive or like snapping back at me.
I feel like that's a huge thing. I have a lot of mom friends that have older girls, right? And I'm always trying to just soak in what's going on with them because my girls are 3 and 5. But a lot of them are like, I just feel like I'm on eggshells all the time. Like I'm just, it's always like, I don't know what I'm walking into.
But it makes sense when you describe it as like a shift in the limbic system because they're constantly scanning. Like if you think about it, they're developmentally preparing themselves to go out into the world and understand risks and things like that. You talk a little bit about earlier on when we were talking about warning signs and what to look for, giving them a safe space to just open up and being really curious so that they don't shut down and that it gives them an opportunity to really talk. And I think that's true across the board when you're talking to a friend going through a hard time or even being gentle with yourself, right? How do you help guide teens and even parents toward resources to reach out to when they're not sitting in your office? Because I feel like now the nice thing with the day and age that we're in is therapy is more widely accepted. There's still a bit of a stigma. You know, I think you do such a great job of bridging the gap and being like, this is a resource as opposed to something that you need because there's something wrong.
Or something that's going to fix you.
So
you know?
So how do you approach that? Like, what's your methodology? How do you provide like resources for people and teach them, you know, how to keep an eye out for the good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of that is so much like education and like parent education. And that's like also what allowed me to like start my Instagram page was I was just like, I'm talking to parents all the time
Yeah.
saying the same
Mhm.
things. Like, what if it was just like all in a place that like everyone could access? Like,
Yeah.
that would be awesome, right? So there's partially like not just my page, but like you should listen to this podcast or this
Mhm.
episode, or like trying to send like resources for parents, because I think parents get nervous and overwhelmed and they don't know what's going on. And so
Mhm.
they're seeking a sense of like empowerment and stability in this time period
Mhm.
too. So it's like just having an understanding makes you feel a little more in control, and it
Yeah.
helps it feel a little bit more contained. And as a parent, if you can provide that level of containment for your kid, that's going to be huge, right?
Mhm.
And then it's similar for teens, obviously, just like different books or
Yeah.
like different podcast episodes type of thing. But it
Yeah.
is just like, what do you like to do? Who do you like to talk to? How do you consume content or information? And then like, let's find people that help you feel good in those worlds. Right?
I love it.
Yeah. What would you say is the first step a parent should take if they're feeling really unsure? Like going back to that, like something feels off.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something in my lizard brain that
Mm-hmm.
senses it, but I don't know what to do. Like, do I jump to therapy? Do I jump to this? Like, what advice would you give that parent?
Yeah, I think, it's like if you have a co-parent, check in with your co-parent,
Yeah.
right? See
Mhm.
if they're sensing this. If the co-parent, it could even be, right, auntie, uncle, like
Yeah.
people who are close to the kid.
Coach or a
Yes.
trusted teacher or something like
Yes,
that.
exactly. And if it is like, yeah, we're starting to feel something's off, people are struggling to name it, maybe going straight to the kid and just being like, hey, I don't know what it is, but I feel like something's shifting or
Mhm.
changing. Like, how have you been feeling? Like, am I crazy or am I getting this wrong, right? Or like, am I picking something up, right? And like asking questions, I find teens are like more likely to be like, yeah, da 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 da, or maybe just like
Hmm.
start absolutely breaking down and being like, school's so overwhelming this year, I can't keep up, right? Da 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 da. But then in that too, like who you go to can depend, right? Like school counselors have a lot of great resources, not just like
Mhm.
on campus on how to help, but also like typically in the community and how to help.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be a great starting point. I also encourage like therapists, because therapists also tend to be like community resources. So whether it's like, I don't know, you're looking for a dietitian or something, like here's my favorite 3 in the
Mhm.
area, right? Um, and just helping them like try to navigate and figure out what it is that's going on or what it is that they need. And then what I like to say about therapy, like outside of any sort of like clinical diagnosis, I think especially in these teen years, I'm like, my role is to sit there with your teen and help them figure out who they are and create a strong sense of empowerment, and also give parents a level of comfort knowing that they're talking to an adult about real
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
And like, I will come to you if we're seeing some major red flags.
Right.
So
Yes.
like they have that safety and containment, but like a parent also has a safety and containment knowing like they're
Mhm.
speaking with a trusted adult.
Yeah. And like a mandated reporter.
Yeah,
that kind of
literally.
thing, too.
Yeah.
What
Uh-huh.
about in situations where maybe things are a little bit more intense? There's a serious substance issue that
Mhm.
a parent like feels like it's a black box they can't get in.
Yeah.
Have you worked in situations where like a actual intervention is necessary
Mhm.
even for a teenager? And if so,
Mhm.
how do you usually advise that being set up?
Yeah. I've What I have found in that is like sometimes there tends to be this dance of like, I don't want to rock the boat or do anything to kind of push the
Mhm.
edge. And it is this level of like, if that is necessary, like you need to start intervening earlier rather than
Mhm.
later. And
Yeah.
so like if interventions are appropriate at that time, there's usually like a higher level of care that then is going to be warranted. And then that's where it's like, especially with therapists, I'm like, here is where I would like look into those higher
Yeah.
levels of care. But often at that point, it's like you really do need a team around you, not
Yeah.
just like one
One
therapist.
person or
Yeah.
one parent or
And
yeah.
especially with substance abuse, it's like if your kid is using to that level, like you want them to detox like with an MD around them at
Yeah.
24/7,
Yeah.
right? So it's like providing just like the physical containment and safety of it, but also giving them like resources and community around sobriety. Right.
Mhm.
What about say there's a friend at school, right? Really noticing something or has been confided in a way that say she
Mhm.
feels like, no, okay, my friend is telling me these things. I don't think she's telling anybody else. She's asking me to keep these secrets.
Yeah.
For a teenager
Mhm.
that feels like I've got to do something to help my friend,
Yeah.
but I don't know who to go to first or how to do
Mhm.
this. Maybe they don't feel safe telling a parent.
Yeah.
What's a good resource or route
Mhm.
for a younger person trying to
Yeah.
help a friend?
And that's kind of where it's like similar to parent. It's like who is that teen close to? Are they really close to their coach? Are they close to the school counselor? Like, is there an adult that you can help get involved?
Yeah.
Because yes, you can be there for their teen, but when we're talking about safety, like, you cannot keep another teenager safe, right? And so, like, there are people that are explicitly trained in this that can do that for you. And so, like, you know, with teens, I will say to them, it's like, you can break their trust to keep them safe. And like balancing that like that is a risk and a rupture that might be warranted or worth taking if it helps keep someone safe.
I like that language a lot. It's very empowering.
Yeah.
Especially like even for a parent too, you know, talking to, there are, you know, the kids that are at high risk for these behaviors. And then there's also the kids that are the friends that are at high risk for being stuck in that situation where they don't know how to handle it. So just to hear that there's something that can be done.
Yeah.
And there are like safety and boundaries around it.
Yeah.
Well, and that ultimately, like, if you're feeling that way and you're wanting to seek help, it's probably like doing that and seeking the help, even though it's maybe breaking the trust of your friend, is being a good friend. You know? What about, you know, maybe our more evolved teens that are even hyper aware of themselves, maybe having some concerning tendencies, like maybe someone noticing in themselves, like, I am acting a little anxious, or I have been doing some intense, like, over exercising or this or that, or like I'm leaning into alcohol a little bit too much. Someone that's already picking up on signs in themselves. What are some things that work for a teenager to sort of check in with themselves, maybe habits or routines or checklists or resources to do if they're already noticing in themselves that there are patterns they're having a hard time breaking out of?
Yeah. And I mean, if one, there's that level of awareness, it's like, that's beautiful, that's great, right? And then like, this is kind of where like self-reflection questions of like, who can I talk to about this? Who can I trust with this information? As well as like, if you are kind of questioning, like, is this healthy or is this unhealthy? Like, what would it feel like if I skipped the gym for a day, right? Like, what would my reaction be? We're looking for that rigidity, right?
Yeah.
And most of this stuff kind of comes down to this like rigid mindset, these ruminations, and like almost trying to explore and experience, like, am I okay without this, right? And like, can I go a day, a week, whatever it is, like outside of that routine and outside of that norm? And if that starts to become incredibly destabilizing for an individual, then it's like, okay, who do I need to talk to? Who can I trust? Who can I go to? And like, I worked at a school last year, and like I had a teen that ended up kind of coming on my caseload, and she went to the school counselor and was like, I want to do therapy. Who can you set me up with? And then it was like, I called mom being like, hey, your kid came in today to see me. Like, can we get a consent form? Right. And just completely self-advocated and like got her the help she needed. Right. So like, there are those self-aware teens. And like, I think this is another thing that I am surprised how many teens that have been like, I've been asking for therapy. And it might not always be in a dramatic way, but it might be like this soft, subtle way of like, I kind of want to talk to someone, or like, do you think you could schedule an appointment with someone? And like, if there are those soft intros of like literally asking for help, like, trust that, follow that, because kids typically don't ask for therapy just to go yap. You know what I'm saying?
If you're in situations where maybe someone is seeking therapy, or maybe something traumatic has happened to a teen and they're not comfortable at home, or the resources aren't showing up at home for them to be able to access therapy, what are some places that are maybe free resources or insurance supported or school supported resources where a teen could self-advocate even if they don't have the support at home?
Yeah. So in California, like teens, essentially anyone over the age of 12, if they're like emotionally intelligent, able to like consent to their own treatment and have a good understanding of like what therapy is, like they can consent to their own treatment, right? And so they can wholeheartedly like seek out and email and sign consent forms. The caveat with that is that then they're going to be responsible, like if there are bills or what that is. So that's where it's like they can do that. You can also talk to your school counselor and see like kind of wraparounds of like, are there any, you know, in-person stuff going on here? Oftentimes like schools might have contracts with like I remember at the school that I was with, there was like Hazel Health that was free to students, and that was like an ongoing online therapy. Depending on the area that you're in, there might be like low cost like kind of community health
Yeah.
agencies that can be a great resource.
Like support groups and that kind of
That's
thing.
fantastic.
Absolutely. And so like I know in my area there's like Beach Cities Mental Health, which is like a great resource. So it's just kind of very community based. But if you like, I mean, Google,
There are things.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like you could probably just Google like free therapy or like low cost therapy in my area and like stuff will pop up.
On the
Yeah.
flip side, if a teen is really resisting help or a situation is urgent,
Mm-hmm.
what do you recommend in like that kind of scenario where it's like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they're not wanting to come into therapy or they literally have to drag their body into the office to see you?
Yeah. And we've been there, right? Like, and I think, you know, again, going back to safety, I'm like, to your kid at the ER, like that's going to be the
Mhm.
number one rec. Like, but then if it is more just like, this is not okay, like there's a level of like, you know, balancing like, yes, you have agency and autonomy. And like, if it's not therapy, then what? Right.
Mhm.
Like, if it is just like maybe your kid's acting out, but it's not super high risk, but it is concerning, like, okay, if you don't want to talk to a therapist, who do you want to talk to or
Yeah.
what do you want to get involved with? Like, maybe it's YMCA stuff, maybe it's Big
Yeah.
Brother stuff, like, maybe it's just like, I would rather volunteer or spend my time doing other things, like, getting an understanding as to like, I need a sense of commitment or like work towards this and like
Mhm.
where are you
Yeah.
willing to meet me? But I think that there's a lot of power that kids try to gain from saying no, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes
And
unfortunately
Yes.
too.
yeah, right?
Like, oh, we know.
we especially with toddlers,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Well,
yeah.
it's funny because all of this applies in some capacity to every stage of life. Like
Mhm.
a lot of it does. And it just so happens that our teen years are really when we're establishing, like you said, that sense of safety and community
Mhm.
and, you know, getting ready to go out into the real world as individuals.
It's kind of like taking a lot of those same primal like child reactions
Yeah.
and placing them in real world, you
Mhm.
know, scenarios now and
Mhm.
having that kind of like, okay, where is the brain gonna, is it catching up and forming to adjust to this new, you know, environment that we're in
Totally.
as we get into our teen years and beyond.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, this was such a helpful discussion, Christina. We're going to include links and
Mhm.
resources in our show notes about what to look for, when to seek help for a
Mhm.
variety of teen conditions. But thank you so much for diving into this with us. You're full of good information.
Thank you.
And that's our show. If you liked what you heard today, please like, subscribe to, follow, and share Meet Bridget with your circle. The best way to help our work here is to rate and review our podcast. We're listening and constantly working to build something helpful for you. Catch you next time.